What's up, everyone, and welcome to Movie Importance Flashback Reviews, where I take movies from the past, break them down, and tell you what I think about them. If you like what you see, of course, hit the subscribe button, join Movie Emporium, hit that notification bell at the top to find out what's coming next, and comment below on any video that you watch on my channel. So I hope everyone's staying safe in this pandemic right now. It's pretty crazy what's going on. Make sure you're washing your hands, all that good stuff. The movie I wanted to talk about this week is, I put it on the back burner even though it's 15 years old this week. It's called Fever Pitch. If you don't know what Fever Pitch is, it's a movie with, of course, Drew Barrymore and Jimmy Fallon. It's about baseball. It's a movie that I really enjoy, even though it has its moments about the Red Sox. But with baseball being kind of postponed for the time being, I felt this movie was kind of not prescient in the moment. It wasn't something that I want to talk about because I wanted to have it kind of align with baseball is what I was going for, because baseball was just starting up. So that left me with a blank slate or blank space in this week. And the one thing I was thinking about that I never even thought about was, I haven't talked about a Steven Spielberg movie yet, which is pretty crazy. I've done like, I don't know, 70 of these reviews. And that's pretty crazy because Spielberg, as with most people, is one of the greatest directors of all time. I mean, I'm very influenced by what he's done just because he is so influential in my childhood, because of the films he has directed. You know, two of my favorite films of his, of course, are Saving Private Ryan and Schindler's List. But, I mean, the man has created so many great films. I mean, look at Indiana Jones, look at Jaws, look at E.T., Close Encounters, Jurassic Park. I mean, the guy is just insanely good at what he does. And that's why he's on the Mount Rushmore of directors. He'd be up there with, like, Kubrick and, of course, Hitchcock. But I like talking about Spielberg in general, but I wanted to talk about a film that may not get as much love as his, most well-known works. And this movie came after Artificial Intelligence. And Artificial Intelligence, if you know, is a movie that's very divisive in the Spielberg oeuvre or filmography or whatever you want to call it. It's a movie that Spielberg took over from Kubrick, and it really feels like a Kubrick film in a lot of aspects, with a lot of Spielberg intuitions, a lot of his sprinkling of his directorial style in it. But the reason I'm talking about Artificial Intelligence before I go in the other movie is because there's a very distinct style to it that Spielberg will do with this movie that I'm going to talk about, as well as doing War of the Worlds, which is a very blown out, very staticky looking style of filmmaking, which is a very futuristic, very, I don't know how to explain it, but it's a very like almost dreamlike state of filmmaking that he did with Janusz Kaminski. Is a style that I'm not a huge fan of Spielberg's. I think Spielberg, when he works with Janusz Kaminski, they do great work, but I just don't like that blown out, very like everything's like very bright and very dreamlike. I don't like that. And so it was like a year or two after this that the movie I'm going to talk about, which is Minority Report, came out. And I think Minority Report is a much more interesting film. It's a much more fun film. It's a much more intriguing film in the nature of what it's trying to do, which is talking about the future and what are your feelings on certain subjects and stuff like that. So that's why I really enjoy Minority Report. And it brings in Tom Cruise doing something completely different than what he's used to doing. But it also brings in that very fun and very energetic Spielberg style that he is known for. And this movie is another thought-provoking movie from based off a Philip K. Dick novel. It's written by Scott Frank, who is known for writing stuff like Out of Sight and, of course, Logan, which are very fun, fantastic films. And Tom Cruise is basically playing a guy who has lost a lot, who is basically framed for something he has no idea why he's being framed for. And it just brings in a lot of thought-provoking things. And this movie, unlike AI, Artificial Intelligence, it did really well. I think it did like a couple $100 million in the Americas, plus a few $100 million worldwide. But what is really interesting about this movie, Minority Report, and what is very interesting with Philip K. Dick, who's known for doing stuff like Blade Runner and so on and so forth, is the idea of, let's think about this. If you have the ability to see into the future, see a crime as it's happening, go to the crime before it happens and arrest the person before they commit that crime, in this essence a murder, how would you feel about that? Because you're leaning into some weird, interesting ideas of, let's say the person decides to change their mind, or they are never going to murder the person. Maybe it's a fantasy they had in their mind and stuff like that. And you stop them and you arrest them and you put them in this stasis chamber, which is what happens in this movie. And they're completely innocent. It's a very thought-provoking idea, and it leads into, go with me here, thinking about stuff like the abortion incident where people are either very against it or very for it or kind of in the middle. So you have this idea, and people are, of course, are going to be on both sides of it. You know, I'm against it, I'm for it. That's where the Colin Farrell character comes in. He's very, he's a watchdog for the judicial system and stuff like that. So he's very interested in the human flaw and the human condition of the idea of what happens if you go and you stop someone and they are in fact innocent, which is really fascinating. But it's a really kind of unique take because it makes you really think, is this movie trying to purvey the idea of, is it going, if something like this happens, would you be for it? Because there's a thing in this movie, a running theme where they're a week away or 2 weeks away from voting make this legal worldwide. And the idea of this situation brings into a lot of back and forth. So it's a very kind of like, if time travel, if you could go forward or go backwards, make a lot of money, it's, this type of scenario. And me personally, putting that into a sci-fi movie, which is a lot of what sci-fi is about thought-provoking ideas. Look at Star Wars, Star Trek, Blade Runner. There's a lot of interesting ideas that you can be throwing around. That's why sci-fi is what it is, science fiction, but it's dealing with subject matter, stuff like that. But I thought that was a very creative, very unique idea that they put in a very well-paced action sci-fi movie, and that's really kind of cool to watch. And another really cool thing about this movie is the idea of, marketers and government able to basically watch your every move. So there's these things called ident scans, which are basically every time somebody walks by a door or an ad placement or whatever it is, it actually will read your eye and try to convince you to buy Aquafina or Coca-Cola or MasterCard Visa, whatever you want to call it. And I think that's where we're heading, to the point of, if you commit a crime, for instance, commit a murder or commit petty thief, they have a way to finding and tracking you in where you're at. So it's a very interesting take. And if you look at something like our cell phones, especially like, the current phones today, every time you use your eye to open up your phone. And of course, when you look at ads, let's say you look at, Nike ad or something like that. Somehow, some way, when you go into another ad or go into another page, there's a bunch of Nike ads. So it's the same thing, but it's in a much more technologically advanced world. And that's another thing about this world, is there's a lot of cool technology things that are very close to reality. There's like the projector that can project like a 3D image. Tom Cruise puts his little like a glass thing into it and presses a button and the projection comes off and stuff like that. There are cars that are basically running along buildings, running along freeway systems that are completely automatic, completely of their own, kind of like what Tesla is doing and stuff like that. And those cars are really cool because they're kind of like little cockroaches in a lot of ways, which is weird to talk about, but like they're riding up along the sides of buildings and stuff like that, which is really cool. But the technology in this movie is very realistic and stuff they can do, and like the jetpacks and stuff like that. The pre-crime stuff is, of course, very futuristic and very fantastical, but that idea of what would happen if you had that ability is something that is very logical in its reasoning. And of course, with most Spielberg movies, this movie, of course, is shot by John Kaminsky. Of course, it's scored by the amazing John Williams, who does another amazing score. It's edited by Michael Kahn. Everybody who's in the Spielberg, bubble is in this movie. But this is the first time him working with Tom Cruise. And Tom Cruise, of course, is a very famous actor, done a lot of great projects. He's a very talented, influential, actor in his own right. And I think this was a perfect fitting. I think this was a perfect pairing of a movie actor and director that are very famous, because the way this movie is shot, the way it moves forward is really, really fun to watch. The synopsis of this movie is basically, we have John Anderton, Tom Cruise's character. He is a detective of sorts for this this government agency called Pre-Crime. And we have this group of things called precogs, which are a woman who's played by Samantha Morton. And we have these two other precogs, which are two males. And they're able to predict murders in the future as they're happening. And the whole first, I think, 20 minutes of this movie, or maybe 15 minutes of this movie, we get a scenario where a husband basically confronts his cheating wife. And in the process, we have the pre-crime unit, which has Neal McDonough and stuff like that in it. And Frank Grillo's in this movie, which is kind of funny. And they're basically tasked with trying to stop this guy from murdering his wife. And we see the inner workings of what is going on. We see like Tom Cruise, finding out who these people are. He has this really cool thing where he has these gloves which can take the footage and he can kind of mess with it. He can kind of manipulate it to kind of get information to where they need to go. And in the process, the time's running, so they have a very limited time to figure out where this scenario is going to take place because they don't know where that's at first. The amazing part about this scenario is not only are we getting the inner workings, which are really detailed and thought out, which is what Spielberg and his production design and his, cinematographer are really well known for doing, but they are unable to find the actual crucial details. For instance, they find a piece of mail, but the mail's label is kind of blurred out, so they can't figure out what's going on. But they kind of figure out, based off the structure of the buildings, that he is able to figure out kind of where it is. He sees a merry-go-round, stuff like that. So they kind of have an idea of where the structure is at, but then they find out that there are many places like this, so they have to figure out all that good stuff. So within a 6-minute time period, they have to get from where they're at to the location of the murder. And this whole sequence is one of the most intense things I've ever seen. You're like on the edge of your seat watching this thing because it's so incredibly well shot. You're so on edge of what are they going to be able to stop this, because they have for the last 6 years been unable to stop every murder that's happened. So in the process of all this chaos, we are introduced to a character played by Colin Farrell, who plays Danny Whitwer. And Whitwer is like a judicial watchdog. He is sent by the government to make sure everything's on the level with this system, because there are a lot of issues and problems that could come up into effect when this thing goes nationwide if it's voted and approved upon. He's a very interesting character because he's able to find the flaws fast in everything that is going through this pre-crime thing, and he becomes a really integral character to basically proving that pre-crime may be not the way to go with these types of things. But in the process, they find out where this murder is going to take place. They find out the Victorian location in Washington, D.C. with all the buildings. But when they get there, which they only have 3 minutes to stop this murder, they find out that all the buildings look the same. They're in the park. Tom Cruise realizes, crap, everything's the same. What am I supposed to do? And then he finds the one thing that you could overlook and not even think about, is he finds the door open to the guy who was cheating on the husband's wife with, and he basically asked Jeb, who was like his main, like the guy that stays behind and makes sure everything is controlled. Tom Cruise goes in with like 10 seconds to go and basically saves the situation. The guy who basically was going to murder his wife is arrested and sent to stasis. And that whole segment, like I said, takes place in 15 minutes, but it is some of the most intense things in this movie. And it really shows the nature of the workings of what pre-crime is and what it really entails. And it's really good. It really sets up the movie nicely. Now, from here on out, John Anderton's story starts to kind of form in a shape. Yes, we got the idea of who he is and what he does. To watch Tom Cruise in this movie is something kind of unique because, like Magnolia, he's a very broken character in this movie, but he is really passionate at what he does. He's lost his wife, he's lost his kid, he uses drugs, his house is a mess. It shows you the kind of the downward spiral that he has gone on as a character. But then it leads into basically the middle portion of this movie, pretty much the running theme throughout the rest of this movie, where John Anderton, through all his issues, basically learns through Agatha, which is the Samantha Morton character, who's the female precog, that there was this woman that kind of jump-started the whole pre-crime division as it is, where she was drowned and the guy was put away to jail and stuff like that. And it's a really interesting way to start a movie because John's character, Tom Cruise's character, starts to investigate it. He goes and he meets Tim Blake Nelson's character, who is the guy's in charge of keeping everyone in stasis, all the people they were arrested. And it leads into him talking to Max von Sydow's character, and then eventually it comes to this whole segment where Colin Farrell's character, the Danny Whitwer character, is investigating John Anderton. He goes to his apartment. John Anderton goes to do his regular job. There's a premeditated murder that's going to happen But the murder turns out to be something that is kind of interesting in a storytelling perspective, because when you see it happen, you're like, oh crap, because and he gets another like premeditated murder scenario. He's going through all the scrubbing, all the video, stuff like that. And in the process, there's a victim and there's the perpetrator. And the victim is Leo Crow, which is the guy that Tom Cruise is trying to find throughout the movie. And the perpetrator is, of course, John Anderton. So John Anderton, who's watching his own footage of him murdering someone, sets off this whole action sci-fi adventure of basically John Anderton going on the run, trying to solve why he's being accused of this murder, that he has no idea what he's doing because it's a premeditated murder, which is a very interesting. Most of these murders in this movie are not premeditated because they're able to predict the premeditation and stuff like that. So the fact that John Anderton doesn't know what's going on, what's happening, but it leads basically to some action set pieces where we have John Anderton's chased by the pre-crime group through a subway system, through an alleyway, through a bunch of houses. There's some really cool segments where, you know, John Anderton's basically attached himself to one of the jetpacks of the pre-crime guy, and they're like going through all these like apartment buildings and stuff like that. It leads basically to him and Danny Whitwer on a chase of one another. You know, Danny Whitwer's chasing after John Anderton. Leads into this robotic car plant, which is really cool because there's a lot of cool fights in it. There's like this really cool weapon, like the recharge it, they just like flip it like with like a nunchuck or something like that. And John Anderton's doing some like crazy ninja style like nunchucking with the weapon and stuff like that. And of course, John Anderton gets away because when he gets like stuck in a car that's being built and stuff like that. It's a really, the car is very 2000-ish looking car, so it's not a very cool looking car anymore, but at the time it was. It leads him to this house of this character played by Lois Smith, who plays Hinneman, who was the other architect of the whole pre-crime initiative. And he basically learns of a thing called the Minority Report. And the Minority Report is the actual report of the incident that is happening. So therefore, he has basically come to the conclusion that everybody that they arrested, that a few of those individuals are actually innocent people, which leads into the whole idea of, is pre-crime a very valuable, very valid thing to do? This leads into the process of John Anderton getting his eyes replaced by the Peter Stormare character, who apparently John Anderton's character arrested. So when he's getting his eyes replaced, you think that maybe possibly that the Peter Stormare character is maybe not going to put new eyes into it, because if he puts new eyes into John Anderton, John Anderton's able to get around without being noticed. But it leads into the sequence where the pre-crime unit is going from like house to house to house, from like shanty, whatever. They're going through different buildings and they're trying to find John Anderton. And it's like a really cool sequence where they're using like these little spider robots where they're going through each place, because this is a very nasty looking building that John Anderton's in. He knows what's happening, so he uses the ice bucket that had his eyes in it to put himself in a bunch of water so that the robots can't, or the robot like spiders can't find him, and they're checking each person's eye and stuff like that. Now, in the process, the Peter Stormare character basically said you cannot open your eyes for 12 hours. They're wrapping around it. But in the process of these spiders finding out where John Anderton is, they shock the water. He comes up. They scan his eyes, and he realizes he actually has eyes, which, you know, Peter Stormare character, as much as he hated John Anderton, actually gave him new eyes. But it's a really cool sequence. It's a really tense sequence because you don't know what's going to happen. You know, the Neal McDonough character and the other character that is, you know, as well in this movie, they are outside his door of this housing unit or whatever, but because it's a different person, they walk away, so everything's safe and sound. And this leads to John Anderton basically going back to pre-crime to take Agatha to find his Minority Report, because he knows he's innocent. He knows he's not going to kill the Leo Crow character. But of course, John Anderton, you know, was able to grab Agatha, and he takes her on a mission to get his Minority Report. It takes him to this cool virtual reality simulation thing that this guy hosts, that this guy has a thing in a mall for, so you can have like relive your own fantasies and stuff like that. And so we find out that the Minority Report isn't actually a thing that exists in John Anderton's world, so he's going to kill Leo Crow, which freaks him out. But of course, the pre-crime unit knows, and they're tracking Agatha and stuff like that. And it basically leads to this like really cool, really unique thing where Agatha is basically predicting where these pre-crime people are going to be. So she tells them to like grab an umbrella, tells them to stop as these balloons walk by and stuff like that. They're able to escape because it's raining. They're able to use the umbrella. They basically end up at the hotel where the basically vision was taking place. She gives him the option. She's like, "You don't have to go up there. You can change your past or your future." And he's like, "I have to go. I'm curious." Blah blah blah. So they end up in the hotel room that we see, of course, in the vision, and it basically is, as Danny Whitworth's character says, an orgy of evidence. And he basically says that because all these pictures in this room are just kind of placed all over the bed. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. Why would the guy who is molesting children, raping children, killing children, or adults, or whatever, why would he have a spread of pictures? Like it's almost like a con job, a setup job. So the problem is John Anderton is so distraught by his son's disappearance and possible murder or whatever that he sees a picture of his kid, and then he sees Leo Crow and his kid together, which is an obvious Photoshop job. You can tell it's been photoshopped or whatever they have in this world, and it makes him mad. And Leo Crow shows up, and of course, Leo Crow's like, "What are you here for?" Blah, blah, blah. He knows what's going to happen, and John Anderton basically freaks out and pulls out his gun and is about ready to shoot him. But as Agatha says through most of the movie, you have a choice. You have an option on what you want to do, and that's what this whole point of this segment is to give John Anderton the choice to not kill Leo Crow. And that's exactly what John Anderton does. He basically lets Leo Crow go, just putting him under arrest, blah, blah, blah. Leo Crow's like, "You can't do this. My family needs to be protected." John Anderton's like, "Who's protecting you? Or who offered you this?" But he doesn't know. And in the long run, Leo Crow ends up killing himself, making it look like John Anderton killed him. And this leads, of course, John Anderton and Agatha to go to his ex-wife to, hide out and stuff like that. And it leads Danny Whitworth into the hotel room, and he starts to become cautious. And he's like, "Why would this Leo Crow character just have all this evidence sitting around?" And then he realizes it's probably to piss off the John Anderton character to make this whole pre-crime situation work. So he goes and visits Max von Sydow's character Burgess, and basically is murdered by Burgess because he has figured out, the Whitworth character has figured out what's going on, and blah blah blah. And we have kind of gotten our resolution of who and what was not only the murder of the woman and the drowning, but the whole setup of John Anderton because of what John Anderton found out earlier on. And of course, we get to the house, the ex-wife, and there's a lot of exposition, a lot of talking. Agatha kind of gives a history of what could have been if Sean, who is John and his ex-wife's son, had lived and seen all this relationship and stuff like that. And of course, because the ex-wife is kind of let known to the pre-crime group that he's there, John Anderton, of course, is arrested, put a Halo unit on him, which is what puts him in stasis, kind of makes him relive all the nightmares and stuff like that. And he's put away into that area where, of course, Tim Blake Nelson is being in charge of. But as the dominoes start falling, as pieces start collapsing upon itself, the ex-wife, of John Anderton, convinces or tries to convince the Burgess character that John Anderton's innocent, that there's something really off by this. She explains the whole scenario, and Burgess basically lets loose the fact that he knew this woman was drowned, and that he did it, but she never said anything, so it's like one of those loose lips types of things. So she goes and she gets John Anderton out of the stasis capsule and stuff like that. And it leads into the final act where Burgess is basically getting an award. He's given this little gun box or whatever, has a gun and some bullets in it, which is kind of a foreshadow, kind of just ironic and kind of convenient that he has a gun now and some bullets because it plays out later on. And he gets a call by John Anderton. John Anderton basically knows what's up, and he's explained the whole situation. He's basically said, "You're done. You have two options. You can either kill me, pre-crime is done, or you can kill yourself or send yourself to jail, or it's the other way around. He kills himself and pre-crime is done, or he kills John." Well, anyways, so basically Burgess takes the non-cowardice way out. He kills himself, and John Anderton is safe. He's no longer a captive, no longer an enemy, the bad guy. And he is pardoned, but in the process, pre-crime is basically dissolved because it is proven that anomalies can happen, alternate realities can happen, and the idea of arresting someone without due process can backfire. So the pre-crime is dissolved, the whole initiative is dissolved. John Anderton and his ex-wife, of course, end up getting back together, and they're having another baby. And the precogs are let loose to live out their life in solidarity in this like nice log cabin in the middle of nowhere on an island. And it just leads into like this very kind of nice closure of a storyline where people who were basically used by the Max von Sydow character get their justice, get their resolution. And that's a kind of relaxing, kind of calm nature to this film, which has always been chaotic and always been stress inducing. And the ideological sense of the nature of what the film's trying to present, the nice subtlety moment of the ending really makes the film impactful and kind of gives you a moment to kind of breathe and relax and kind of let loose all the emotions that you've been feeling through this movie. But like most Spielberg films, this is a film that is just, it does a lot, it says a lot, and it's just fun. It's, it's questioning your motives, questioning your ideologies, but it's doing it in an adventurous way, which is what Spielberg is known for. And that's why I really, really like this movie. I really enjoy it. And it's funny too, because Catch Me If You Can also came out this year. This came out in like June or July or whatever. And then, Catch Me If You came out on Christmas. So this was a pretty good year for Steven Spielberg. It was a pretty decent, fun, entertaining year for what he is known for doing. And like I said, this was the more adult movie of the year for him. But yeah, Minority Report is another winner from Steven Spielberg. Another just great time at the theater, and another thought-provoking type film, which is what Steven Spielberg has kind of gone into as his later years of approach, from here on out. So, but yeah, there you go. That's Minority Report in a nutshell. Like I said, I'm pretty sure a lot of people like myself really enjoy this movie. Is it as well liked as E.T. or Jurassic Park? No, but I think for what it's trying to do, I think it's pretty good. I think I really do. And I think Scott Frank's script is pretty good too. So, but that's it. That is my take on, of course, Minority Report. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this movie. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Let me know what you like about it. If you do like it, what's your favorite part about this? Like I said, I really do like a lot of stuff, but I like the mall scene a lot. So, but anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you like what you see, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at the top to find out what's coming next, and comment below on any video that you watch on my channel. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out. What's up, guys? Thank you so much for checking out Movie Emporium. I really appreciate it. If you want to, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification button and the bell at the top. Find out what's coming next for Movie Emporium. Also, check out these 2 videos. They're amazing. I think they're awesome. I think you'll enjoy them too. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.